I moved to Hertford in the year 2000 into this house. And when I bought this house, I had no idea there was an arts centre here. Everybody thinks that I deliberately located next to it, but a friend of mine told me, there's an arts centre next door, Bryan. Oh, I'd better go and have a look.
Oh, wow.
And
so
as I was going out one
day,
day, I met Lionel, who lived across the road, who was a great user of the art centre and a very enthusiastic artist himself, a very good one. And he said, come along to a class. So I went along to a class and really enjoyed it and met people. And then somebody approached me who was actually working at the time for the courtyard, I think as a manager or something like that. He said, would you like to be a trustee? I said, well, I don't know about that. But anyway, they offered it me and I said, yes. So I've been involved with it ever since.
Okay. And how long was it before you became the chairman?
About 5 years, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
If that, maybe 4 years. Yeah.
Okay. So that leads me on to ask you about how you met Alan Davie. Was he sort of a part of a bigger art scene in Hertford? Or?
No, he wasn't. I didn't know him through that. I just knew him from his reputation and knew that he lived somewhere around here. And we had a trustee meeting and we wanted a patron. So we brainstormed who on earth could we get as a patron. And we came up with the idea of Alan Davie because he is and was a great international name in the art world, really.
Yes, of course.
And so that's when we went to meet him.
Okay, so how did you meet him?
Well, we offered him the opportunity to become our patron, which if he would like to, and he invited us to meet him in his house. So 4 of us went out to meet him, I think, yes.
Okay, so did you get the opportunity to go into his studio?
Oh, yes, and his house, which was full of wonderful artefacts which he brought from all over the world, which was magnificent background to him, really.
Yes. And what impact did his studio have on you?
Huge, because he has the most efficient running art studio I have ever known an artist to have. He documents everything. He had huge card indexes and so on at the time, and every painting and sketch he'd ever done, I think, was probably recorded meticulously with all the details in a very useful filing system, which is a bit of an oddity. You don't quite expect an artist like him to be so concerned with that meticulous way of doing things, but he did.
And how did you find him? Was he quite happy to show you his work and talk about it?
Yes, he was quite happy to show us his work and to show us his studio, which had the most amazing amount of paint tubes in it. He had little trolleys which he wheeled around, which were just huge paint tubes on. So that was impressive to see that. And he was still working away. He had something on the easel that day. And he was 84 at the time at the visit. I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did going to his studio at Gammel's influence your art at all? Did you come away feeling, oh, I must start to paint like Davie and get involved with the symbolism and the zen of his work?
Not quite, because I'm not so much an abstract painter as he is. Definitely not, and not in his league either. But yeah, I guess it would have influenced me a bit, but not more unconsciously than consciously. Yeah.
And did you meet up with him at all afterwards? Did you form a friendship with him?
No, that never evolved out of the meeting. In fact, he didn't actually come to any events that we organised for Courtyard Arts, but it was just great having him as our figurehead.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think that was? Was he just sort of so caught up with his own world and painting that he didn't actually want to sort of come out of that environment and get involved with anybody else?
Well, I don't know for certain because it's just speculation, but I think he was involved with his own world and didn't go out very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What did he play any of his music whilst you were there? He was a great jazz musician.
No, I knew he was a jazz musician because that's one of my great interests is jazz and the history of jazz, so on. So I knew very much about his world that he occupied when he went to New York. It was the hub of jazz at that time. Yeah.
And can you tell me how, you say you're really interested in jazz, how it affects your own music, your own art?
Occasionally it does. I will occasionally take a jazz star photograph or something and do a painting.
You've got an interest in Alan Davies' work. Have you ever seen any of his work in a gallery situation?
Yes, in many really. In Scotland in particular, you often quite casually come across it if you're visiting an exhibition. There've probably been Alan Davey there in many cases. There's often special exhibitions of him in Edinburgh. I say often, I don't know if I don't go there all the time, but I do go there every now and again because my son lives there. And I get the impression they're quite proud of him in Scotland, even though he chose to live in England. Also, the other thing about I've seen his work is in Fitzwilliam Museum, for example, in Cambridge, and other museums which I can't recall at the moment. But he's a very prolific artist, ever so prolific. So he's turned out a huge number of paintings, which is why in his house, he's built next to his house, he's built a big storage unit.
And what impression did you get of the man himself? Did he seem sort of quite generous and want to talk about his artwork?
He didn't talk so much about his artwork, but he gave a very nice energy off of being a very good man, and he is unquestionably a very innovative thinker.
Yes.
And it was at the leading edge of jazz in New York and abstract art in New York and in UK.
When you were in the house, did you meet his wife at all?
She was there, but stayed in the background really, so he really interviewed with us and talked with us, yes.
Okay. And can you describe the house in a little bit more detail for me?
It's a long time ago now, but I was impressed with the eccentricity and the avant-garde nature of what he'd bought, and a bit like Picasso, who'd collected lots and lots of artifacts and from Africa and other countries, and showed he had a very inquiring mind and very wide-ranging interests.
And did he have his paintings exhibited on the wall as well inside in his house?
Not particularly. No, they were more or less in the studio.
Okay. And did you...
As far as I remember, that's a bit of a difficult one to be sure about.
Yeah, how long
I didn't go into every room, you know.
How long ago was it that you actually went to visit
I was trying
him?
to work that out. I think it was around 2005,
Okay.
probably.
You mentioned that when you've seen Alan Davies' work in many galleries, namely in Scotland, but have you seen any in any London galleries?
Yes, in particular I remember walking down, I think it's Cork Street, near the White Cube, and I saw a gallery with Alan Davey clearly on the wall inside, and lots of contemporary British artists from the same period as him, and sculptures as well. So I went in and talked to the gallery owner, I presume he was the owner, and told him that Alan Davey was a patron of Courtyard Arts in Hertford. Did he know that? And he said, well, I did actually, and really liked he liked to show me the Alan Davey painting on the wall and point out to me that in his view Alan Davey underpriced his work, because he gets lots of rich Americans in who want to buy paintings for their collections, and when they come to Alan Davey, although it's thousands of pounds, I have to say, to them it's not a lot, because they're used to buying prices much more than that.
Okay.
And I keep trying to get him to up his prices, but he won't.
He won't sell them. And was he successful in selling work at that time? Do you know? Did the gallery owner say that he was actually selling the work?
No, he didn't actually, but I must assume he is, because he was keeping them on the wall.
Yes, yes. How would you assess Alan Davies' work looking back over the era?
Well, in my opinion, he's one of the leading British artists, particularly as an abstractionist, and to my mind far ahead of others who have made much more money out of art movement, such as the Damien Hirst, for example, who I wouldn't even rank him in distance of Alan Davey, who I think is tremendously creative and tremendously original. and very beautiful use of colours as well, which are quite stunning. And you don't often find that until you come further forward in British art, where you get people like Barbara Ray, who's also a spectacular colourist, for example. But I think he's alongside those people.
When you're looking at Davie's art, how does the colour and the symbolism affect you?
Well, I really feel excited when I see his painting, because I'm very much into colour myself, and having originally trained with Christina Patterson, who you can see on the wall there, is one of my favourite artists, and she's very colourful, and my hero is Van Gogh, who one can say no more. And I think Alan Davie has that huge ability to use colour effectively, to, even in abstraction, to make you feel something profound inside when you look at his painting. Yes. And I think that it's coming much more to the fore now. I mean, there's been a big revival of interest in Alan Davie in this town, particularly because of his local association with the town, but also I would guess in Scotland too.
What's your lasting memory of Alan Davie?
Well, I think an innovative, creative artist who never stops, in a way, and who deserves more fame than he's ever had in life, I think.